I mentioned a little bit about paradox. Paradox, I think I defined it last week just sort of loosely as the coming together of two seemingly contradictory statements, the seeming incongruous or even contradictory. Sometimes people think of a paradox is like a riddle. Think of the riddle. I'll even ask you a riddle right now, just to remind you of a riddle. Remember the riddle that Oedipus is asked by the Sphinx? What? Do you remember that riddle? Oh yeah, that one. I was thinking of the one about what has a mouth but never eats and a bed but never sleeps. A river, right? Well, that's a riddle. It's sort of in the same family as a paradox. But that's not a paradox in the sense of when we're dealing with Christological paradoxes. It's not like a riddle. And this Christology or a class like this is not meant to kind of, oh, I get it. It's a river. It doesn't really mean a mouth. That's like where the water comes from. Do you see what I'm saying? Or a riddle would be like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Someone told me once that evolutionary biology has solved that. Does anyone know? I don't know. I assume that would be a chicken if it was evolutionary. It's a chicken. I don't know. Okay. So I wanted to just sort of define paradox. This is very helpful, especially even though we're looking at Christology from the inside. We're not worried so much in this class about what atheists or secular humanists or materialists or Marxists, or Hegelian philosophers would say about Christology, but it's just helpful to keep in the back of your mind. A paradox is not simply saying something that's illogical, like a married bachelor, or like a square circle, and then just kind of saying it's just one hand clapping. You just have to just deal with it. That's not what a paradox is. A couple of nice definitions I found of paradoxes from some logicians, professors of logic. One is an apparent contradiction which hides a deeper truth. An apparent contradiction which hides a deeper truth. The second one is a conclusion that sounds absurd but is arguable nonetheless. So we're not dealing with something that's illogical, but we're dealing with something that seems contradictory, but in its very appearance of contradiction, there's a deeper truth. So a paradox is different than a riddle. Once you explain the Oedipus riddles, you're done, You're like, oh, that was a cool riddle. Tell me another one. But paradoxes are different. They're sort of a bottomless pit of reason, but they just keep on going. Okay. Here's just to kind of keep pounding away at this paradox thing, because it's just really essential. It's also spiritually important because of the nature of this class and the subject matter. Sometimes people will think that it's important to absolutely prove the non-contradictoriness, if I can use that word, of say, the Nicene Creed. I know we're not there yet, but it's something that people have been trying to do for centuries. And here's a quote from a logician named Peter Geach in 1969. He wrote a book called God and the Soul. Let me just read you this, and you'll hear the distinction he makes, that how paradox draws you into deeper truth, even without needing to resolve every appearance of contradiction. Okay? Of course, I do not think that natural reason can establish even the non-contradictoriness, let alone the truth of the Christian belief that a certain human being was and is Almighty God in person. So what he's saying there is, he does not think, and he's a logician, so his game is logical truth, that natural reason, that is, without any reference to faith or belief, he does not think natural reason can establish even the non-contradictoriness, let alone the truth of Christian belief. He goes on and says, a demand for a strict proof of non-contradictoriness. You know what I mean by non-contradictoriness? It can't be contradicted. A demand for a strict proof of non-contradictoriness is anyhow often unreasonable, even as recent logical researches have shown in pure mathematics. Certainly if the doctrine of the Incarnation is true. Now watch what he does here, because now he's kind of swinging the pendulum sort of gently back to the middle. Certainly, if the doctrine of the Incarnation is true, it will not be self-contradictory. And any argument that it is self-contradictory will contain a flaw. But saying this is very different from saying that if the doctrine is true, we ought to be able to see or prove once for all that it is non-contradictory. Did that make things more confusing or less confusing? I realize we don't say non-contradictoriness a lot. What he's saying, essentially, I'll put in my own words. As we move into this world of what the New Testament writers are simply reporting and interpreting, we do want to be on the lookout for anything that is self-contradictory. A equals A and A equals not A. That breaks the rules of reason and logic, so we don't play that game. But that's not to say that we're dealing something which is going to be self-evident, or that we can prove that it's non-contradictory. I mean, that's probably true, like he says, in lots of areas of life, even human sciences. So even less should we expect that kind of level of proof in this. Okay. But I promise you, I'd always get a poem to these classes, because the poets get paradox better than even the theologians. So here's a great little poem I'll read you from. It's called The Divine Paradox. It's from a 15th century anonymous poet. A god and yet a man, a maid and yet a mother. Wit wonders that wit can conceive this and the other. A god, and can he die? A dead man, and can he live? What wit can well reply? What reason give? God, truth itself, does teach it. Man's wit sinks too far under by reason's power to reach it. Believe and leave to wonder. The whole poem is just one paradox after another, isn't it? It's beautiful. Believe and leave to wonder, but that's exactly what we're not going to do tonight. That's more of an invitation to worship God, but we're not going to believe and leave to wonder. We're going to try to contextualize how the Christians in the first century protected and began to enunciate some of these paradoxes.